Let's get started. Welcome. So good that you are here. Is there anybody here who does not understand Dutch? One person. All right, that's going to be, then I'll stick to English. If you cannot hear me, just come closer to me. I'm gonna, the title of my talk is introducing the Open Source Hardware Association in the Netherlands. And I'm going to be talking about open hardware. However, just to get that out of the way, the Open Source Hardware Association Netherlands is no more, or at least for the time being. What we've been trying to do, Open Source Hardware Association is an association from the US promoting the use of open hardware or open source hardware, and we had the idea earlier this year to start a Dutch branch, a Dutch version with that. We have been doing some meetups, seeing if we can get something going. However, we have noticed for 3 reasons that maybe right now is not a good time. That's why I also put there for now. The first is that it seems to be that there are only a few people in the Netherlands who already understand open source hardware and are working on it. So that makes it pretty difficult to get something going in the Netherlands, we noticed. The second reason is that we also didn't get a lot of support from the US. It was like they were not waiting for us to start something in the Netherlands. We've waited for months to even get some reply from them, but that's fine. But the third, and for me the most important reason, is that for OSHWA, is how people pronounce it most of the time, you're not allowed to do things commercially. And for me, working with open hardware, I'm a big open hardware enthusiast. Doing something commercially is like one of the most interesting parts, because maybe making the hardware and designing it and engineering it is interesting, but how can you make a business model out of it is maybe the biggest challenge, as is also for free and open source software. So these 3 combined made me decide, okay, maybe let's put OSHWA now aside for now, but continue with open hardware. And we are doing that right now with our own organization. I will tell you more about it. So don't worry, this hour is still going to be filled with open source hardware. So maybe to start with the obvious, what is open hardware? So since we have a really small audience, which is actually nice, so it can be more interactive. Can you raise your hand if you know what open hardware is? Oh, everybody already knows it. Okay, that's great. So can you tell me something about open hardware, something that comes to mind for you?
Yeah, like publishing source code for hardware, the designs of the PCBs, etc. They're published.
Right.
Have to have open documentation.
Right, exactly. And when they have open documentation, they are published. You can do something with it, right? You can change it, etc. So when I think of hardware, it's like a physical object. The first that can come to mind, if you're not in electronics like us, but all hardware is open, right? I mean, if I buy a chair like this, I can look at it, I can change the chair to how I want. But the trick is if you're not, if you have the tools. Sorry?
I don't agree that you can just copy it, because it's been made in a specific way, and the way it's made can be very hard to understand, or it's very hard to find how it's made. Just
okay. So even with a chair, it's already difficult. Yeah. But you can. My point is that why are we looking at open hardware now, or why not 50 years ago? And I think one reason can be that more and more electronics and sophisticated technology is put into our products, and the tendency for people who make these products is to close them up. Legally, you're not allowed to do something. Technically, they glue it shut or use some kind of screws that make it impossible for you to open it up. Or technically, it's like, okay, there is a firmware on it, but I have no idea how to change it or how to reprogram it. So I like to explain it with this. For you already know it, but just quickly, the iPad 1, I have one at home. It looks like new, brand new, no scratch on it, but it has become pretty much unusable because there only runs an old version of iOS on it. You cannot install a new version of iOS. That's why you cannot install any new apps. I cannot run Linux on it or something else. I think it's maybe possible with a lot of tinkering, but it's not easy. Cannot change the battery because they put it so far away in the gadget that you cannot do that. So that's like the opposite. Also another story I like to tell about the possible impact of open hardware is that I start out with, okay, you have these two guys, you of course know who they are, so, and then I say, well, what they have done, they've made something, they've been at the start of creating a system that's now in 80% of all the smartphones, that is under 90% of all the biggest websites. All the Google servers, the millions of servers have it at their core, and I would say that they have made a bigger impact on ICT and software than Bill Gates and Steve Jobs combined. And then of course this is the Linux operating system, and with that, like the open, free innovation model that they have brought to the software industry. And then the question is, can this open model of innovation cross from bits and bytes to atoms? And that's like the predicament of open hardware, which right now is in an experiment. People are testing with it. It's not by far not as far as free and open source software is. Yeah, of course, then you have the OSHWA.org has a definition, which when you read it, of course, is very familiar from the definition of free and open source software. Like free to make it, to change it, etc. And then they have something about why, maximize the ability of individuals to make their own. Well, we already know that, right? Who knows this one? Please raise your hand. One, only one, two. This is a Revolver. It's sort of like the GitHub for open hardware. Yeah, so that's one of the things that's popping up. You know, for open source software, we have our developed methods, we have our platforms like GitHub and other platforms that we use to make this stuff. But for hardware, we don't know yet. Revolver is by a Dutch guy called Bram Gene working on it, and well, he has a very nice platform. But if you look at, okay, how can we work together on making these open hardware products, it's not as smooth yet as with software. Yeah, so when you go into it, you see like a graph structure of the different components, and you have like a wiki kind of explanation on the left, etc. It's nice, but it should be improved. Please raise your hand if you know the Things network. No? Has anybody heard about LoRa? Or LoRaWAN? Yeah, one person, two, three. Okay, so there is like this thing going on called Internet of Things. It's a big hype word, but it does come down to that more and more products are connected. And one thing you want, if they are connected, is to have a simple way of feeding data to the device or getting data from the device. And it's very expensive to put Wi-Fi chips or 4G SIM cards in all these products. So what they've done is they made different kinds of machine-to-machine networks, and one of them is LoRa, by the LoRa Alliance. It's an open standard. And what Wienke Gieseman has done, he's a Dutch guy, he said, okay, what if we make these networks free and open? And he started a movement called the Things Network. Right now Amsterdam has been covered, and more cities are also hopping on to create an open and free network for anybody to use for their Internet of Things products. And the hardware that they are developing is also open hardware, and they just did a Kickstarter campaign for it. It was very successful. They have, I think, more than 100,000 euros to start making these products for everybody. There's something going on? Ah, the noise.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no noise anymore, but also no screen.
Oh.
So what do you want? Screen or and noise or? Okay.
I think those microphones are.
The microphone, yeah.
Turn off the microphones.
Hello. Yeah.
Now the noise is gone.
The noise is gone and the microphone's not.
And the screen is on.
Okay, great. Don't move, Mr. Bean. Yeah, so as going for an open hardware example, open hardware project, even a Dutch project, I think this is a great example of how quickly things can go. Yes.
Yeah, I found a little remark on open hardware. Afterwards on Internet of Things.
Yes.
What you're talking about.
Yes.
Because open hardware is all about that the user has like power to continue his product.
Yes.
It's like the continuity of the product is like a safe, like goods. So you can make like a production line or something.
Yeah.
Internet of Things is the opposite.
Yes.
Internet of Things is brought to us like a hype, like oh you have to do this and product like that nice and big, but it's like a big product in disguise. It's like every product it can be a sensor for somebody that can monitor everything everybody is doing.
Yes.
So I think before you start making Internet of Things, I think it's better to first talk about how we can make it like a safe, how we can make it like that it can be safely implemented without jeopardizing our privacy.
Exactly.
Further.
Yes.
So
yes.
Yeah, for me it's a little bit of contradiction. I like open hardware.
Yeah.
But Internet of Things is for me it's a little bit like a no-go.
Yes.
Personally.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And I'm going to tell you about a project that we are working on to combine them, to combine open hardware with Internet of Things to solve some of the problems that you mentioned.
Okay.
So I invite you, if I'm not clear at that point and you still have questions, please ask them. Yeah. So this is, I think I just supported this project. It's an open hardware router. I don't know if you heard of it, but I think it's cool because there's a lot of open hardware out there, but a lot of them is not aimed at getting a big impact like a consumer kind of product, and this one is. And I already had like the Think Penguin router, which is completely blob free, but the hardware itself is not open yet, and this one is. So I hope it comes through because you never know with this crowdfunding stuff. But this is another example that I supported but failed miserably. Of course, you know the Chromecast by Google. This is sort of the same thing, but then a dongle that is completely open hardware as well, and they just didn't follow through, unfortunately. Another point I would like to make is, of course, that you, as you have with software, you also get with hardware something I like to call open washing. So it's like they say it's open source, but it's actually not. So you of course know Oculus Rift, but do you know this one? Who knows OSVR? Nobody? It's like, sort of looks like the open source version of the Oculus Rift, but I've read the license agreement, but it's actually not that open because everything you do, all the intellectual property you create, so to say, goes back to the people of OSVR. So they are in complete control of the platform and can at any point decide anything that they want to do, sort of bait and switch, anything. So I think also with software, but also with hardware, we need to pay attention to, is it really licensed openly or is it just masquerading? Yeah, so this guy also made some interesting remarks about what he calls free digital hardware designs. If you haven't read the articles on Wired by Richard Stallman, I recommend, and you're interested in open hardware, I recommend you to read them. What he says is, one thing he's going about is non-free hardware an injustice, because of course to Richard Stallman, non-free software is an injustice. So ethically speaking, it's not right. And when he's talking about hardware, he says, well, for functional objects, which do not have any digital hardware, he says the same ethical reasoning can be done. And he says for digital hardware, not yet, because you cannot copy and distribute hardware in the same way as software yet, because it still has to be made in factories, whereas software I can just run it on my own computer. And once we can run hardware on our own computer, or meaning we have 3D printers that can make digital hardware, then he argues the same goes for hardware.
Or FPGA designs.
Sorry?
FPGA designs.
Yes?
That's also, then you can make your own hardware, so to say.
Yes.
On top of an FPGA chip.
Yes.
Your own design, digital design. And you can just copy it.
Yes. You can, it's sort of like software then, right? Yeah, right. So then I would like to present to you what we have been doing. We started an organization last year called Totem, and our goal was to start curating open hardware products, and also products that are not just very exclusive type of things for only a few people in the world, but really like consumer type of stuff that everybody or a lot of people could use. And we have, right now we have 3 projects, and one of them is the Totem Energy Monitor, and it connects to the smart meter. And I know you all think that the smart meter is a bad thing, and I agree actually, but on the other hand I think it's pretty cool that you can have real-time, really detailed access to your own energy data directly from your own house. So it sort of for me was like a trade-off. Okay, on the one hand I don't agree with that they are installing these things, but on the other hand it's pretty cool to have that data. However, the smart meter in the Netherlands is not so smart that you can actually get the data to your phone or your computer. You need something in between to translate the data that's in the meter to TCP/IP. And yeah, we're working on that right now, and we have a working prototype. We had some problems with an earlier version that we created our own version of the hardware, but we now are in the Arduino prototype phase. It's just Arduino Uno with an Ethernet shield, and then we soldered our own thing on top to connect it to the smart meter. And we have it running for different versions of the smart meter, because there is fortunately a standard in the Netherlands that says what the data should look like that's coming from the meter. However, this had different versions with different baud rates coming from the data port and these kind of things. And we've connected this thing to something called Emon CMS, which is like open source software to store your energy data and to present these nice graphs out of it. So it's pretty cool that also there are already people making software for energy data, and you can just use it. Another project we're working on is this one, is Code Captains. It's, this is like version 4 of our prototype. It's a robot, and you can use it to learn programming. Or not you, of course, but because you already know how to do it, but maybe your children or somebody else. And what is nice about this thing, besides that it's completely open hardware, is that we put this Groovy connector on top. It has Arduino inside, and you can start simple. You can just take it out of the box, and then it has some sensor proximity sensors, and you can use Google Blockly or Scratch to do the visual programming. And then if you want something more, you can connect it to micro USB, and you can directly program the Arduino processor in it. And if that's not enough, you can start to do plug-on boards, or you can 3D print your own casings, etc. And the third one we are working on right now is the Totem Open Health. And our idea was, well, the thing is, and I will tell you a little bit more about it, that we like these new technology and innovation and the wearables. However, we don't want to send all our data to some server in the USA, right? So we noticed that on the one hand we like it, but on the other hand we don't like how they get our data, so we didn't use these products. And then we thought, oh, we can just start something ourselves. We can create our own product and then do it the right way, so to say. So we're working on that right now, and we have our first version produced, 100 of them, and we are giving them, we are loaning them to people who want to test and experiment with them, and we're getting some traction. I'll tell you more about it. And look at this one. So Gardner says that in 2016 there will be 90 million wearable devices sold. And if you read the tech blogs, then pretty much every week or something you can read about a new wearable device that's coming on the market. Almost finished. Maybe you know some of them. I have some here actually. It's the Scanadu. It's sort of like a tricorder from Skytrack. You put it to your head and then it starts to measure things about you. If you want to test it, you can after my presentation. We found these ones from China. They basically have the same hardware as the more famous Fitbit and Jawbone, but like super cheap. And also the more advanced stuff like this is from Vital Connect. It's actually like a patch you can put on your chest, and then it measures your heart rate and your position and your respiration and all these things. So, but what is the problem with all these devices? So one thing is that a third of all fitness trackers are abandoned after 6 months. So what does that mean? People buy them because they think they're cool, but maybe they don't do exactly what they thought they would be doing. The only way that somebody can change it is the producer, because you cannot change the firmware, you cannot change the apps or whatever. So people don't like it anymore, they put it away. That's a big problem, a waste. Also, activity monitors give inaccurate readings for many forms of exercise. So if you have one, you may start to notice that it doesn't, you compare it for example to a strap that you have that measures your heart rate, and then you have this new device and it's not correct. However, you don't have the possibility to improve the algorithms, you don't even have the possibility to look at the algorithms, and you don't have the possibility to get the data that they're gathering about you. We also saw this as a problem. And I don't know if you've seen this one, that right now already people are convicted in court because they have been using a Fitbit. So somebody gave a testimony like, at this time I didn't do anything because I was sleeping, and then they saw, okay, but you have a Fitbit, and they started looking at the Fitbit data of this person, and I was like, hey, but your Fitbit says you were not sleeping. So what is the problem? Proprietary closed systems, right? I think we all agree on it, and I would like to say that a huge amount of social value is missed. Even though we have these millions of devices coming on the market, a huge amount of value is missed because people cannot change the technology to do something that they would want to do it. And then of course the solution is make it open so people can change it and do what they want with it. This is what we have made right now. It's the first version of our sensor. It has a 3-axis accelerometer and gyroscope, a temperature sensor. It can put raw data on a micro SD card. It has Bluetooth LE on it. The battery can last up to 40 days, and that depends on the sampling rate. So of course, if you can switch on sensors and off if you like how you want, and then you can set the sampling rate. If you use all the sensors at 1000 Hertz, and of course your battery is empty very quickly. If you use a low frequency, then it lasts very long. I have it right here. It's this one. It's already a second version of the encasing that we have. The version that's here is the first version, but the battery compartment was not that good. So we now have this version. After the talk, I'm happy to show it to you and explain exactly what's inside. So this is the new version. And then what you can do, of course, you can start gathering data. So what I did, I just took it to the gym for an hour, and you can already see the pattern for walking and rowing and running and cross training are different. And you can do some analysis with that, and then see, okay, I was cycling. You can see how many rotations I made and how fast and etc. So you're completely free to take your data and do what you want. And as far as licenses are concerned, we found that there is an open hardware license by CERN, and that's a pretty nice license because it forces you and everybody who distributes the physical product to also include a link to the source files. So for example, if you're using another type of license, that could require only that you, how do I explain it? When you use Creative Commons, for example, with hardware, you're required to relicense the design files under Creative Commons. It doesn't say anything about the end physical product that you create. And with the CERN open hardware license, does say something about it. The source code of the firmware is under GNU GPL version 3. You're familiar with that. And the documentation and everything is on Creative Commons by attribution share alike license. So we're also experimenting with that. Perhaps you think, oh, maybe this is not a good idea, or that would be better. Please tell us. We're also just figuring stuff out on the way. Who is familiar with embedded software development here? Please raise your hand. There are a few people. Okay. Well, then for you, this type of stuff, I don't know. Does anybody use embed from Nordic? No. Okay. You use C to program it, and then we've also created this programming jig. So what you can do, you can take out the PCB out of the sensor, which is like super small, and then you can put it in here, and you connect it to something that looks like this, J-Link, and then you connect this to your USB port, and then you can flash the firmware. We also have a GitHub organization actually with a number of repositories, the products we're working on. As you can see, not that many people yet, only 5 people. I have to say it's just a thing we are building, and we just are starting to get going. Wiki as well to explain everything about the electronics that's inside and how we did things and why. We have been in the final of the UNICEF Wearables for Good challenge. It was actually pretty cool because finally somebody else acknowledged that we may be doing something that's valuable. So out of 250 applications out of 40 countries, we were selected as the last 10. We didn't win, unfortunately, but to be a finalist was already pretty nice. And what we did is we came up with something to monitor a fetus and a pregnant woman, because we found scientific literature, that it's possible to use simple accelerometer data to measure the movement of a fetus. And combining that you can do that very cheaply in places where you don't have this very expensive equipment available, we thought it would be nice to be able to do that. We also found that you can use our sensor to help people with PTSD, to help them connect with their emotions and to detect pneumonia. Right now we are working with an organization in the Netherlands called Sophia Revalidatiecentrum and the Haagse Hogeschool, the Hague University of Applied Sciences, to make an application for Parkinson's disease patients. And that is something called freezing. Does anybody know somebody with Parkinson's disease who may be more? Okay, okay, if I'm saying something that's wrong, please interrupt and correct me, okay? So these patients typically run into something called freezing, which is like when they have to stop, for example, for a revolving door, you have to stop to wait, and then it's very difficult to start moving again. And to break out of that, they need an external cue. For example, somebody who calls them or somebody who gives them a push or something. And what you can do with the sensor is to detect that this freezing moment is happening. And what you then can do is to let the smartphone give a signal like audible or vibration to give that cue. And what you can also do is start to measure movement, and not like the Fitbit kind of movement, like you did 5,000 steps today, but actually measure the length of the steps to say something, how the disease of the person is progressing or what is happening for the doctor. And the Sophia Revalidatiecentrum already did a pilot project only with the data from a smartphone and was successful, and now we are seeing with multiple parties, okay, can we make this into an actual product? We also won the Proof It Award 2 weeks ago, which is from a medical investment fund, which is nice that we get acknowledgments from medical people as well in that way. And we won 5,000 euros, and we're now going to invest that in making an Android app for the sensor. So if you like to play with our Totem Health sensor, you can go to our website and then or just talk to me, and then you can apply for a dev kit, and we'll send you one. You loan it from us, and then if you're done with it or we want it back, you just send it back. Yeah, that was what I wanted to tell about open hardware and the things we are working on. And then I have some more things that in my story that are things I notice and I wonder about. And it's not, this part of the talk was more like I'm telling you what we are doing, etc. I don't pretend to know more than you, just in comparison to other audience I have to have a clear-cut story or they don't understand it, but you are all experts and very smart, so I don't need to do that. But for this first part, are there any questions about it? Did I answer your question about Internet of Things and open hardware? Yeah, okay, yeah. All right. So then some things that are somehow related to open hardware, but also related to TDOS. There's, for example, I made this graph based on data I found here and there. I can tell you after the talk exactly where I found it. So what you see here is the number of PCs, smartphones, tablets and connected things in use over the years. The graph is not complete because I could not find all the data, but what is noticeable is that you can see that the number of PCs in use is slowly increasing over the years. And then you see smartphones coming up, it's going pretty steep. It already crossed the number of PCs in use. You see tablets, that is also going up. But another thing that is coming up is connected things. And when I was looking at the tracks for TDOS, I saw pretty much everything going about PCs. And I think I found four of the 40 or something that were not about PCs. And my question is, I'm not sure if it's true, but my question is, are we missing something here?
I'm not sure about PCs because what's a PC?
Yeah, so in the definition of the numbers that I found, it's the x86 architecture of PCs.
Yeah, okay, but if you're talking about Arduino Uno, which is a PC, but it's also embedded.
No, but that's not in the numbers. So the blue line is not Arduino.
Yeah, but I mean, no, but what I mean is more and more embedded contains x86. More and more the real Linux systems on embedded.
Well, but I know for a lot of them it's not.
Yeah, but I know there's more and more.
So does that solve the challenge?
No, what I mean is that I'm just stating that there are more and more embedded systems which contain a PC or similar. Yeah, sure. So,
for
instance, every router or whatever is actually a Linux machine.
Yes, that's great.
It's embedded, but it's a Linux, so it's a PC. It's exactly the same thing as what I'm having here in my laptop. Apart from it has less memory and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay, so that could be like an answer. So the first why I bring this up is because I think that all computers should run free and open source software. That's sort of like the premise. And that's sort of what Richard Stallman says, and I think that maybe somehow you also like to think along the same way. You don't agree? Okay, then for you my point is irrelevant. But I sort of like to think, okay, if we have computers, maybe it's nice that it runs software that we can change and that we can redistribute and those kind of things. And then when we look at computers in our environment, we see that it's not only PCs anymore, but it's also our phones and also all other things like the thermostat you have on your wall, your washing machine is getting it, your car, etc. And my question is, are we giving enough attention to those developments that they also should run free and open source software? And if you say, well, it doesn't matter because in the end they will all run x86 processors anyway, so they will all be able to run Linux, then it's fine. I'm not sure if that's true, but it could be. I don't have the answer. Yeah? No.
I just have my doubts about it has to be open source.
Yeah.
I mean, I like it to be open source. I
Yeah.
try to use as much open source as I can.
Yes.
I have been I actually started with using Windows a very long time ago.
Yes.
And I switched to Linux about 3 years ago. And I feel like switching back to Windows right now. I think that open source kind of like fails to deliver a very good GUI.
Right, okay. Hold that thought. In 2014 I went to LibrePlanet and there were two takeaway points I took from there. One is the GUIs are not good enough. That was not what I said, but it's what I noticed in all the different sessions. Like the software, that open source software is really, really good software. However, at some point it's missing the good user interfaces, maybe because the people who use it are typically very technical, so they don't find it very important or something. The other thing that I took away there is that we are missing sustainable business models. How do you earn money with open source? And maybe those two come together somehow. So I think that was 2014, it's already 2015, you know, it was like more than a year ago. And we still have this challenge, I think. And then I was on vacation last week. It was very nice, and somebody a few weeks ago recommended me this book. It's by Jaron Lanier, also the author of You Are Not a Gadget. Who knows this guy or has read this book? Nobody. Okay. Well, it was before last week. I was all about like open and free, and we just make the whole society knowledge open content, open education. It's all great, and we just keep moving that way, and then we will have a great society, something like that, right? I like to call myself a pragmatic idealist. I see this ideal view, but I just like to work on things right now. And then I read this book, and I start to think, oh, maybe he has a point. What he says actually is not a good idea to make everything free as in gratis, because when you cannot make money anymore out of it, you create maybe one of the problems that we have right now with the GUI and the business models. We should find a way to make money, and maybe donations is not enough. Maybe we should move to something else than just donation-based working and people who spend their free time working on free and open source software. Another thing, there's a book coming about Creative Commons, and it was they did a Kickstarter or crowdfunding for it, and it was very easy to become a co-editor of the book. So now I'm co-editor of the next Creative Commons book. But the thing is that they just published their first chapter on medium.com, and Amanda Palmer, I didn't know her before, but coincidentally they have put Amanda Palmer in this article, and the book also talks about Amanda Palmer, that Amanda Palmer is like the example how to do things in a new economy, to gather a community, to do crowdfunding, etc. And for Creative Commons this is like, oh, everybody should start doing it. Whereas in the book they argue, well, this is like an anomaly. She was able to do it because crowdfunding was new, and she was one of the first one, and that's why she was successful. But don't think that everybody can repeat her pattern and also start to earn a living. That's sort of one of the other problems that we have. So everybody is then trying to copy this. Well, that doesn't work. Another thing I noticed, I hear applause next door, so I check my watch. Do I still have 5 minutes? Another thing I noticed in the newsletter of the FSFE is that one of the new things that somebody was refurbishing old laptops and putting Linux on them and then selling them. Which of course in essence is fine, of course, sure. But when I'm thinking about if we're doing like of the battle with the proprietary closed things, then this seems to me so small. And I think we need to figure out a way again to do something else, to earn money in a different way. There's also an interesting thing that came by on Commons transition. How maybe we can find a way as co-ops. I love co-ops. I don't know why, but when I read about co-ops, I just love them, and I just also want to be involved with one of them. And this article explains how maybe a co-op, I think then combined also with free and open source software, can successfully be an alternative to something like Uber. Or Uber. Do you say Uber or Uber? We also don't know. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So who thinks that Uber is like a super awesome good thing? Yeah, one person? Yeah, so on first face it looks like it's a good thing, but when you dig a little bit deeper, and Richard Stallman has some really nice articles on his website about it, it's not such a good idea, because Uber is getting a lot of power because of the position they create, and the people that work for them become become the machines actually. They end up in these dead-end jobs earning only a little bit of money. And I think it's interesting to see maybe we can challenge that, you know, let's do that. Let's challenge Uber, why not? Another thing is what Jan, you came with that one. Patreon.com, who knows Patreon.com? Oh, okay. Most of you. So that could be, I think, a nice alternative to how make money with developing open source software, going away from, or it's still donation based, but it's a different kind of donation based. And I think we need more of these things and I want to become successful. So people can make a living out of, more people can make a living out of making free and open source software. I would love to see that. Yeah.
Do you have problems with Uber having too much power? Patreon can actually destroy projects if they want to.
Who? What?
If they somehow disagree with you, the way you run your project or whatever, they can sort of take all your donations and then run with it.
Patreon.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that would be then a challenge to create a better version of Patreon, right?
Yeah. Well.
Yes, I think that's what we need. We need more experiments. And if you have a better idea, please, let's do it.
Better idea would have like a donation system that isn't political.
All right.
And distributed.
Exactly. Federated, distributed. Yeah.
Yeah,
Guaranteed, whatever. Yeah.
You don't have to moderate, and Patreon does moderate.
Okay. Maybe a topic for a talk or discussion. It's very interesting. Yeah, I think so. So I'm closing off right now. Totem is not just me, of course, but it's a bunch of people. The community is growing. You can apply for a dev kit of the Totem health sensor. We also have meetups in and around The Hague and Rotterdam. And my name is Diderik van Wingerden. And this is my email address and phone number. And come play with the gadgets if you want. I'll be at the FSFE booth. And yeah, thank you very much for your attention.